This episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks is brought to you by Gigabyte motherboards and graphics cards. Gigabyte has promised us some next-level products to be unveiled at Computex 2019, so stay tuned to HotHardware.com for future coverage.
In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we'll have Galaxy Notes, Asus ROGs in total rapture, Dell XPS 15, a lovely laptop, and an Asura Genesis Xtreme SSD, if you've ever heard of that. All of that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. I am not hearing the video pre-roll stuff, so if I screwed it up, then I'm sorry. That's okay. Everybody can learn how we make the sausage here. It's all good. It's all good. Welcome back to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. I'm Dave Altavilla, and this is the podcast where we talk about lots of things in technology with smart people and then people with half a smart brain like myself. With me, as always, when we try and hit you here at 5:30 on Wednesdays, is Marco Chiappetta. How you doing there, buddy?
I'm doing okay. No complaints. Beautiful day here in the Connecticut lab. Things are good.
Yeah, man. Marco is managing editor for HotHardware.com. And we also have Chris Getting, who is an editor extraordinaire at HotHardware.com. He's the man behind the curtain and the mixing board currently now, right, Chris?
I'm back to running everything, so I'm going to be doing a lot of juggling and not a lot of talking here. Let's hope there's not too many mistakes, but if there's mistakes, you can blame me.
That's it. We need someone to blame, Chris. We always have to have someone to blame, but we'll go easy on you. We appreciate you giving your time, your blood, your sweat, and your tears here at the 5:30, post workday hour.
Anytime.
What are you imbibing tonight, by the way? Anything special?
I am not drinking anything actually right now. Probably best to not mix alcohol with learning to drive again.
No podcasting and consuming for you. I do have a lovely Stone IPA. It is fresh and crisp. And Marco's drinking BCAAs, branch chain amino acids. Don't you know?
Okay, that's right. Trying to take a little bit of weight off and being under-caloried. I don't want to catabolize too much muscle, so supplementing with some BCAAs.
I also noticed you have a rather, let's say, well-grown face currently.
It started as a joke. I figured let's annoy the wife a little bit and see if she goes for the beard. And I'm like 8 days in. It's nice and thick here, so we're going to see what happens. Beautiful.
Growing the man beard. So I know you're just starting to get the groom going. Are you going to trim it down to the chin strap? That's kind of big these days. Or are you going to go the full mountain man look?
I think this is as far as the shape goes, it'll probably stay like this, but there's no way I'm going to get super bushy because the more I have down here, the less it's going to look like I have up there, and we're not about to accentuate that.
I don't know. There's two schools of thought with that. I mean, they say that actually accentuates the whole look sometimes too. I don't know why. Don't come to me for phallic advice. Let me tell you.
But in a pinch, I'm gonna grow the hair on my back really long and just comb it up.
That's my next move. Absolutely, chicks dig that. No question.
Yeah, they love that stuff.
All right, well let's move on and talk about our grooming and hygiene practices. I'm not well shaven today, so I'll step out of that conversation quickly, adeptly, and let's talk about what we came to talk about, which is some interesting things in the land of technology and what we've been working on. You've missed us probably for a good few weeks here. We apologize. We had to actually shift gears on podcast production, and that's where, thank God, Chris Getting comes in to help us out. But we're had to part with John. John got busy on us, and we wish him well, and we miss him. Damn it! But Chris is gonna rock and roll. But in the meantime, we've really been chewing through a lot of fun things at Hot Hardware. Lots of stuff in the land of PC DIY. We spent some quality time with the good folks at Main Gear Computers down in New Jersey and assembled a killer AMD Ryzen 3900X based liquid cooled gaming rig. And it's an all AMD affair, actually powered with AMD Radeon 5700 XT. And again, that 3900X 12 core CPU, 32 gigs of RAM, PCI Express NVMe, PCI Express 4.0 hard drive or SSD, excuse me, and just absolutely screaming fast. It is now sitting next to me on my desktop. I almost should turn the camera, but I don't want to screw up my shot. There it is there.
I gotcha.
Thanks, Chris. That thing is absolutely stunning. I absolutely love it. It is a work tool. I will say that. It's doing mostly work. I have gamed on it. Played a little Gears 5 on it. We'll have to talk about that in a little bit. There's the quick scrub of the build in action. That's actually Marco's mitt. Is that Marco's? No, that's actually that looks like Brendan's. Yeah. He's pulling out the CPU bracket, but the CPU is in the socket there, and then it's going to get assembled in. And yeah, lots of fun stuff with the guys at Maingear. What a great shop too, huh, Marco? Good crew down there.
Oh, that place is, I mean, any place that can put up with me for a full work day, has to be cool. And they're super gracious, super cool setup. Obviously, the machine came out sick. So, yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, it's a beautiful setup. The Maingear Vibe is the case we used. And it's a mid-tower case, but it has, you're looking right there at the acrylic water distribution block called the Apex liquid cooling system. At least that's what Maingear calls it. And the thing is just dial for sound. So it's all RGB and you got lighting control and all that good stuff. But there's actually white cooling liquid. We chose a white sort of translucent cooling liquid. So it's coursing through this block and through the tubes to the CPU. We don't have the GPU in the loop yet. Two big honking radiators. I want to say there's a 360 and I don't know what's in the front, 240. Just tons of cooling in this thing, and you light it all up with the white liquid, and hit it with some white or blue lighting, and it just looks beautiful. Great machine, and thanks for the help from the guys at Maingear. Certainly their rig, their design, it's beautiful. The vibe there it is right now. We're topping it off. Just thoroughly impressed with the guys at Maingear and their machine. You can actually build one yourself. That's sort of the whole objective of the Vibe, which you can buy pre-built from Maingear if you like, because they're mainly a boutique high-end PC pre-built shop. But you can also, this is their first DIY kit where you can actually buy the case, buy the liquid cooling, and the Apex liquid cooling system and all that good stuff. And acquire that from Maingear via Amazon or Micro Center. They actually have it there. Pretty good system, right? I mean, what did you think? You've seen a lot of cases. You've done a lot of work currently with some of the chassis designs. What did you think of that chassis design, Marco?
Oh, I mean, it's perfectly set up for the hardware we stuck in there. All the cases nowadays, they're much smarter in terms of cable management, where you can put the extreme cooling stuff, hiding the power supply, not wasting a bunch of space for 5.25-inch bays that very few people use anymore. So the way that it's a mid-tower, but there was like a ton of room. I think you probably could have put an EATX motherboard in there if we wanted. I thought it came out great. It looks good to me.
Yeah. No, it's an impressive setup for sure. It's real efficient, super quiet on my desk. And it is now handling my stream pretty well, but it does lots more. We do a lot of video production here, so I'm doing a bit of that these days. Lots of work, a little bit of play, good stuff. Good stuff from the folks at Maingear. Stop by their site and check them out. We've been working with those guys for many years, and they are, if you're looking for a pre-built system, the kind of the best in the business for boutique guys. You're going to pay a little bit more. But it is a real enthusiast's outfit there. Like, these guys are the real deal. That's where they come from, right, Marco?
Oh, absolutely. They make some of the most beautiful machines I've ever seen.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, let's move on. We'll talk about some of the reviews we've had up on the web. I'm gonna skip order here and move along, since I've been yapping quite a bit, and ask you a little bit about this Asus ROG Rapture GT-AX 11,000. I think it's Wi-Fi 6 router. There's a lot of acronyms going on in that sucker, though. Is Wi-Fi 6 all that these days, Marco, or are we just in the early days of the tech?
Well, yeah, yes and no. So we are in the early days of the tech. Like if you grab this router, odds are you probably don't have a device that connects via Wi-Fi 6. Like there's the Galaxy S10 and there are some controllers out there, but if you have a pre-built rig and you bought it, more than a few months ago, odds are you're still on 802.11 AC. But the real kicker with a router like this is you basically get an upgrade across the board in terms of your network performance. So this is Asus's top-end router targeting gamers, obviously with the ROG Rapture branding there. Believe it or not, it has RGB lighting. There's a logo on the top and some of the lights. You can actually control the color of the lights on this thing. But what makes this guy, really special in terms of, comparing it to a mainstream router, first of all, it's the performance. So you have a quad-core 1.8 gigahertz processor inside with a full gig of RAM. Like it's a little machine in there. It's a really powerful router, so it's capable of handling more connections faster, yada yada yada. These things are basically running their own OS and managing the network. So plenty of performance in that regard. Plus, you have a 2.5 gig network port. You have multiple gigabit network ports as part of the switch that's built in. And then, of course, you have the 802.11x or Wi-Fi 6 as it's known, and there's basically 3 channels on this guy. So you have 2.4 gigahertz and 2 5 gigahertz channels, and in total you get to that roughly 11,000 megabits of total bandwidth that can be funneled through this thing. Now, with all of those big high gain antennas and the powerful output and the great software Asus has put in this thing, it ends up being the fastest router overall that we've tested to date. It didn't win in every single test. Now, of course, testing Wi-Fi is extremely difficult. It's hard to keep everything exactly apples to apples because there's interference and if you're not positioned exactly the same spot. But our guy Paul that did the review, he painstakingly does the testing, and compared to some other high-end routers, this thing just rocked in terms of coverage area, in terms of bandwidth, even at a distance, ping times, just everything was strong. And the interface to control, like you really got to come by the site and check things out. If you've logged into an older or mainstream router, or you're stuck with the router that came with your ISP, and you log into through the browser to configure it, go look at what this Asus router offers. It's insane, the number of options and how descript everything is and just how well laid out the configurator is. So just a super high-end router across the board.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we sort of struggle a little bit, honestly, with router testing, right? I mean, it's really hard to have a database of Wi-Fi routers tests and data from multiple different routers over the generations. We're on AC now. Maybe you would have the previous generation before that, 802.11, was a G. And just to have that database, because the variability between test environments, between editors, between workloads, there's just a lot. So Paul did a real good job of just capturing what he had on hand. He had a real high-end AC Linksys AC router, and then looked at a couple of different data points with this, with the Wi-Fi 6 and a Wi-Fi 6 capable client. That's what's key. You've got to have a Wi-Fi 6 capable client to enjoy the full benefits of Wi-Fi 6. But it also has better network capacity with multi-user MIMO and all that good stuff as well. Does everybody, Marco, everybody on your home network, let's say in an implementation like this, does everybody have to be Wi-Fi 6 for that extra multi-user MIMO benefit that Wi-Fi 6 has built in, extra capacity, extra bandwidth, certainly. But does everybody have to be compliant for you to see that? Or if you've got 1 or 2 clients, is it still a better buy these days to go Wi-Fi 6? Certainly we know for future proof, but I guess just in general out of the gate.
Yeah, so like the answer is kind of mixed. Like technically, if you want to take advantage of all that bandwidth and all that range and all of the advanced features that allow for the increased range and a less chance of interference, you need to have Wi-Fi 6 client and the base station. However, because these routers tend to be based on higher end hardware platforms, everybody sort of gets the benefit. You have a router that's got more processing power, more memory, more capacity. And when you have multiple machines connected, you sort of always benefit from that additional performance. So, the answer is kind of mixed. Me personally, I don't know, like I have a thing for routers. I would totally upgrade and stay on the bleeding edge of routers because lots of people don't realize just how many devices are in their house using the network nowadays, between TVs, phones, tablets, PCs, smart devices, like your doorbell. Like there's so many devices now on the Wi-Fi that having a really good quality router that's going to get constant software updates and the latest feature updates and the latest security updates, it makes sense to have a killer router. And based on what's out there today, this is one of the most killer routers you could get.
Yeah, that's funny. Marco is a thing for routers.
I'm a dork. What can I say?
I was going to say, spoken like a true geek.
I can't help it. It's in me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree though about routers. There's something about them in that, number one, people tend to burn through them more than the average, home computing appliance, and it's interesting. You I think almost more than, let's say, a laptop or a desktop. For whatever reason, there's something about, maybe they're just not built that well, but they either burn out, they probably get like over configured with too many IPs after a while, and the memory just, needs a full hard factory reset. People don't do that. And then, it just bogs down. But am I right? But do routers have a seemingly shorter shelf life?
Yeah, I just think no one takes care of them. They get stuck on a shelf. They get stuck in a closet. They overheat. They get dusty. Nobody maintains them. I don't mean nobody, like geeks do, but right. Most people. It's literally, you got these stupid articles online showing how to hide your router behind books. You're basically putting it in a heat box. Like just lots of people do dumb stuff. So I think they're more prone to going bad. Yeah, I also agree with you that some of them probably use cheap components. I'm not going to name the router I have here. You actually gave it to me, but it's a high-end router with like amplified antennas, and it's starting to smell like electronics are burning. So I'm pretty sure I am again in like it's been like only a year. Like I'm going to need another router soon again, but yeah, it's all of the above. So many issues, and it's one of those things too that when you're configured properly and you have a high-end router, you notice how much better your connection is. So, it's worth investing. Is it worth investing $450 in something like this? That's going to depend. If you're a gamer, you want all these crazy features. It's probably the best router out there, consumer router out there right now. But it's pricey. That I think it was on sale for $369, but it's like a $450 router.
So, before we move on, and this is an interesting topic in general, router. It is an expensive router. I think when you look at a router in this price bracket, I think to me it makes sense that the average enthusiast, computing enthusiast or home power user would want something like this. However, the trend for gaming routers kind of baffles me a little bit. How many gamers do you know are on Wi-Fi a lot? I wonder what that demographic is. I wonder what the percentage of the audience of that demographic is, gamers at home on a home network that aren't plugged into a wired connection. If you're a desktop guy, you want to be plugged in, to a wired connection. If you're a console guy, you want to be plugged in. A lot of them have, you have an Ethernet connection at the home theater point. I guess the Wi-Fi side of it, the router side of it's important, from a wired standpoint. The Wi-Fi side of it, I don't know. But you have you have these routers. I mean, that thing has 8 antennas. It looks like it stepped out of the Matrix, right?
Oh yeah, it looks like a head crab. It thing's crazy. It looks like it can attack you. If it gets pissed off, it's going to come at you.
But that's what's kind of funny. It's like it's this trend in routers, Wi-Fi routers, that gaming router. Okay, yeah, I get to minimize the lag, the ping, but if you want to minimize lag, ping, and increase bandwidth, you're probably not going to be wireless, right? You're going to plug into the wired connection. Am I struggling with something I shouldn't here?
No, I'd agree. I think most savvy gamers want to be wired. However, I mean, I know a ton of folks, a ton of console gamers that just go Wi-Fi. So it really I think the super geeks like us, you know the benefits of being wired, and you're going to go through the lengths to get wired, whereas some folks are just like, oh, it's a network connection, and they go wireless.
Yeah. I tell you, I was chuckling a little bit at the cutscene that Chris put up there from the review with Paul holding the thing up to his face. There you go. That's HotHardware editor Paul Lilly looking at this thing like it might haunt his dreams. And the old head crab there. That's a big freaking router. Look at that next to that guy. Paul does not have a small head either. So I mean, that's a big device. $450 worth. That's up to you. You decide. But performance is killer, no question about it. As far as routers go, the Asus ROG Rapture GT AX 11000 Wi-Fi 6 router. We'll see more of these for sure. And a slow, I would say a slow sort of methodical migration to Wi-Fi 6 on the client side. I think you're going to see that more and more. The motherboard that we built, that new main gear rig, the Ryzen 3900X motherboard has Wi-Fi 6 on board. More clients are going to come out, laptops, things like that. That will take advantage of it. So good stuff. All right, let's move on to the land of mobile, and I got a chance to take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus, power of the pen, and much more. And interesting device for me to look at. Here it is right here. Interesting finish on this device. Let's see if I can get the look to get at you without blowing out the screen too much. But that's the back of the device, and this is called Aura Glow. And it's a silver. It's an iridescent silver that, when it captures the light, as you can see, really does a really kind of neat job of rendering colors, multiple different colors, all the different colors of the rainbow, actually. And there it is in the review. It is it's a fascinating device. Great design, great finish. It's certainly a fingerprint magnet in that finish. I would maybe suggest, if you're more concerned about fingerprints, to get a darker color. There's multiple different colors. There's Aura Glow, Aura White, Aura Black. I think white may be a little bit better option. I think the silver is probably the most fingerprint inducing color of the bunch. But, man, Samsung can build a beautiful smartphone. There is no question about it. I think, folks comparing, folks in the iPhone world, if you're looking for something to compare from a pure aesthetic design, industrial design, quality kind of perspective, Samsung series of devices, whether it be the Galaxy S10 or the Note series, this new Note 10. I have a Note 10 Plus. That's a Note 10 Plus. It's a 6.8-inch device. This is best of breed when it comes to smartphone design for Android. There's no question about it. Great stuff. I really like the OnePlus 7 Pro, by the way, as well. But Samsung has consistently produced just totally gorgeous devices. 6.8-inch. AMOLED display, dynamic AMOLED display. It is HDR10 Plus compliant, and that is another key benefit of this device for Samsung. There's no question about it. This display, the AMOLED display on this phone specifically, and on the S10 series as well, are by far some of the best displays on the market in terms of image quality and color fidelity. When it comes to some of the higher refresh rate technologies that are out there these days, like the OnePlus 7 Pro, for example, the 90 hertz display refresh. Once you see that, also a very good OLED display, maybe not quite the punch of Samsung's dynamic AMOLED, maybe not quite the color fidelity, real close though. When you see that high refresh rate, that makes a huge impact as well. So I will throw that caveat in there. It comes at a premium in terms of battery life. But so beautiful display, Galaxy Note 10, serious camera array, ultra wide, standard, and telephoto, 3, tri-camera array in the back. Front-facing selfie cam now has been reduced to one selfie camera. The S10 series has two with a depth sensor for a little bit better portrait mode selfies. I didn't really see an advantage either way. I think the Note 10 takes selfies just fine, even in portrait mode. It does have a portrait mode. So great camera array, great performance, Snapdragon 855, 12 gig of RAM in our setup. I think there's an 8 gig of RAM configuration as well. We had a 512 gig UFS 2.1 flash storage option. So takes great photography, great beautiful display, great industrial design, and of course the pen. You have the pen, which has, I'm going to grab the pen there, excuse my reach. This is the S Pen for the Galaxy Note 10. This is something that, in order to justify the cost of the device, you really have to, in my opinion, you really have to want. I personally don't have a use for it. I mean, I just wouldn't use a Note, an S Pen or a pen in general, stylus, to take notes to work with on a smartphone. It's just not my use case. There are people, however, journalists, doctors, you can think of a myriad of professional use cases and everyday use cases, but there are people that swear by this. And there's a loyal Note following, Galaxy Note following as a result of that. But, starting at $1,100, it's pricey for the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. I want to say the 10 is less. It's just one of those things. You have to be able to justify it. It is a super premium device. Everything about it is, pretty much perfect. They did get rid of, and I hate to say it, it's going to, it won't bother some, but it bothers me. They did get rid of the headphone jack. I'd rather have a headphone jack. I think it just gives you more flexibility. It's not ready to get rid of it yet. But just a beautiful device, big battery, so solid battery life. We had a 4,300 milliamp hour battery in the Plus. I want to say the 10 is a little bit less than that, somewhere around 4,000, maybe 3,800 milliamp hour. But this thing had no problem with battery life. Little bit less battery life in our test than the Note 9. Not a lot, but came up behind the Note 9 in terms of battery life. Is it a deal breaker? No, this thing is all day, runtime with ultra fast charging now too. So faster, higher power charging. I think the standard out of the box charger is 25 amp. 25 amp? Yeah. Charge rate with the standard charger that comes out of the box. They have another, not 25 watt, not amp, 45 watt charger as well. That you can buy optionally for even faster charge time. And one of the few phones in the market, as well as the S10 series, the Note is also supports wireless charging and a faster 15 watt wireless charging. So lots of good things going on. Very, very respectable, top end, sort of top percentile battery life, unbelievable design and features. But in my opinion, you gotta really want that pen. What do you think about the Note, Marco? And I know this has been actually your daily driver of choice, right? In the previous generations.
Yeah. So I'm still rocking a Note 8 right now. So the Note 10 probably, arguably the best Android phone out right now in terms of just overall features, aesthetic, everything. And Samsung does charge a premium for this guy, but the funny thing with Samsung is, you see the big launch prices and they're up there, over $1,000, but it seems like every carrier runs sort of crazy promo for the Samsung devices where it's buy one get one free or what.
Yeah.
I know there's caveats there, but you know what I'm saying. There seems to always be promos. But I 100% agree with you about the S Pen. If you're not going to use the S Pen, look at the Galaxy S10. If you are. If the S Pen appeals to you and all the cool features that it enables, the Note rocks, just killer phone. And but the funny thing with the finish on that thing, you really got to see it live. I don't think I've seen a good photo because it kind of refracts the light and you see like a rainbow. But in person, that thing is just gorgeous.
Yeah, no, it is. It's an impressive finish effect that they created with Aura Glow. They call it. That's the finish name. And yeah, you can't appreciate it until you see it live. I will say you're gonna want to have that fiber cloth all the time because it does get you. You look at it and you're like, oh damn, it's so pretty, but then it gets mucked up real quick. And then what do you do with cases on it? You got to protect it, so you want to put a clear case. Make sure it's spit shine clean, and then put it in that clear case so you can appreciate it. But yeah, it's a really cool finish, impressive stuff. IP68 water and dust compliance. Not every phone these days has that. That's one thing that OnePlus, with the OnePlus 7 Pro, which is my daily driver, OnePlus forgoes for cost reasons. And IP68 is, can be important for folks that are, they beat on their phones. I haven't had a problem with it. The most moisture my phone gets is in my shorts when I'm at the gym, probably. I don't want to get too graphic, but yeah, it's an impressive device for sure. I just don't know about the pen. One thing I will say is that Samsung continues to innovate with the pen. And one of the things they incorporated with this, they had a big announcement at the launch with Microsoft on stage. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, came on stage, and they actually have a really tight integration with script or hand notation to text. So you can just sit there and scribble on the screen in the Notes app or in Word, and it will automatically, almost instantly, translate to text, to optical character recognition on your script to text. And then you can send it to somebody. You can say, share in a Word document, an email. And it's so seamless. And I just thought, dang, this is what, if you're gonna bring a pen just to have a pen, that's no good. You gotta bring the hooks with it too. And I think Samsung continues to do that. So good stuff from the folks at Samsung. I was impressed. We gave it a recommended. It's a pricey one, but worth it if the pen stylus is your jam.
And a hell of a lot prettier than that new iPhone.
There was a headline I saw. Interestingly enough, there's a headline. There's a phobia out there, and I'm forgetting the name. It's a very technical name.
Trypophobia.
Tryptophobia. Do you have that right, Chris?
I think so. I think it's something like that.
It's fear of holes.
Oh my God, so many jokes.
No, I know, so many jokes, but there were actually people with that phobia at the event or watching the event online that were getting triggered by the iPhone 11.
What the hell's wrong with this world that we live in?
The 3 cameras on the back.
I'm sorry if this is going to trigger anyone, but it's actually the top result for trypophobia right now.
There you go. There you go. I am not lying. I sent that story over to Brandon on a news desk today because I was like, this is kind of freaky. We should probably look at this, cover it. So anyways, all right, let's move on. Let's move on quickly to Marco. Do you want to talk SSDs? You want to talk laptops?
I'll do both, baby. I'm ready.
Why don't we talk about Dell's XPS 15, the 2019 edition with OLED?
Let's do it.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I've seen it.
Yeah. So absolutely sick machine. So coincidentally, one of the few machines shipping today with Wi-Fi 6 built in. So this was another Paul Lilly article. And if you've seen the XPS 15 for the last couple of years, it might be easy to look at this guy and say, oh, that looks just like the last few. And, externally, Dell has done minimal things with the chassis and the overall design, which is a good thing because the XPS line is, arguably one of the best out there. They did reposition the camera finally, so it's no longer the up-nose shot. It's a super thin camera at the top of the display. And you have all of those cool Dell features like the Infinity Edge display, that you've become familiar with. Now, this particular device, though, all of the internals are updated with some crazy high-end hardware. So the model that we looked at had a 9th Gen Core i9 9980HK. So that's the 8-core big monster processor in there. NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1650. 32 gigs of RAM in there, 1 terabyte NVMe SSD inside, plus killer 802.11ax Wi-Fi. Just you basically name the high-end feature that will fit in a thin machine like this, and it's in there. So now, in terms of the aesthetic and design, as we mentioned, XPS 15, one of the best machines. Well, the XPS 13 and the 15 are some of the best machines in their class. If you want a machine this size, just simply a gorgeous notebook. This particular model we tested had a awesome OLED display. So the display in the machine, I have to just double check the res. Dave, was it 4K? Yeah, this was.
We had a 4K OLED, yeah.
So 4K 400 nit OLED. Technically, it's listed as Ultra HD and with HDR support, but it's only 400 nits, so not like the true crazy high-end HDR. But side by side, when you see these displays with a typical IPS or an IP, what is it, IPA or IPV display, whatever the other ones are, just night and day difference in terms of the contrast and how deep the blacks are, and and how bright the whites can be. And of course, with all that crazy high-end hardware inside, one of the fastest notebooks that we've tested as well. So consistently across all the benchmarks, it didn't necessarily, lead across every benchmark, but for, day-to-day computing tasks, absolute monster. And with the 8-core processor and a GTX 1650 in there, perfectly adept at, content creation workloads and some gaming. Now, the only caveat with that much hardware in the thin machine is battery life. So it wasn't bad. If you look at our chart, it was right about in the middle. In the 1080p video loop test, it scored 351 minutes. So kind of right in the middle, not quite as high as some of the other machines, but for the kind of horsepower you get to be untethered that long with this kind of machine, pretty good. So no real complaints there.
Yeah, actually, yeah. When you do the math on that, 351 minutes, it's almost 6 hours, 5.85 hours to be exact. And so, it's still pretty good. One of the things you will find with OLED too, especially in dark areas, is that you can turn the brightness down, and because the contrast is so good, you can still see it at lower brightness settings, perhaps, than the average IPS display. We calibrate our displays to the exact same lumens output, brightness output before we do our tests, so that all displays are equal. You're putting the same amount of light out. But I'm telling you, when you look at an OLED display, especially sitting in your living room at night, for example, maybe the lights are down or maybe they're not. That OLED display is going to have such a beautiful high contrast as well as deep blacks that you probably can dial it back even more. So it gets maybe an unfair shake in our battery test, but there's only one fair way to do it, and that's to level the brightness settings, before you test, because panel brightness affects battery life, plain and simple. So that's what we do that. But yeah, I think that's solid battery life for an OLED display, especially a 4K OLED display. It's a bigger machine. So the 15-inch machines have larger batteries. I want to say this is it's only a 52 watt-hour battery. Is that even right? That seems small.
I'm not sure.
But I'd have to look that up. I want to confirm that spec. I would say 72. I'm wondering. Anyways, we'll have to look that up. But yeah, the other caveat you mentioned, with all that horsepower under the hood, an 8-core CPU in this case, you can get a Core i9-9980HK 8-core CPU, 16-thread. That's the config we got. You can get thermally saturated. There's no two ways about it. Mm-hmm. And it bled off. We saw about a 10% variance between runs in constant use. So, when we slam it with our benchmark gauntlet for constant use, that's kind of the variance we see. Usually you end up seeing a 2 to 5% anyways. Sometimes it's variance between the benchmark itself, variability in the benchmark itself, and sometimes it's, the average notebook that isn't, thermally challenged. So that may be a word of advice. Do you need to get an 8-core? Yeah, you probably, for most folks, the 6-core variant, because you can get different CPU configurations, obviously, different options, might be a better way to go, unless you're a super high-end user and you really need that those extra cores of throughput. What are your thoughts there, Marco? That was we had to discuss that one point.
Yeah, so I mean, it's unavoidable when you have that much that many CPU cores in such a constrained area, if they're pumping out the maximum amount of heat possible for an extended period, you are going to get throttling. It's physics, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, this particular setup, if you look at the benchmarks, it kicks ass in short bursty workloads because it's such a fast processor, such a fast platform. And like, if you look at a Cinebench run, it's twice as fast as previous gen machines in a multi-threaded benchmark. Now, it wouldn't maintain that 2x lead because of the saturation, but most people aren't using a laptop for, you know, a 45-minute, 100% CPU workload. So, yeah, you're probably right. And if you're going to be practical about a high-end machine like this, the 6 core is probably going to serve more people better. And that's probably the one Dell's going to sell more of. But, I mean, this guy's really no compromise because unless it's a big, giant gaming notebook that's loud and, you know, twice as thick.
Yep.
All notebooks with this kind of horsepower are going to throttle at some point, going to become thermally saturated at some point. This is really sort of a no compromise Ultrabook. It's an awesome machine, and if you need the horsepower, I personally would have no problem recommending it. I think the XPS 15's, you know, pretty nice.
Yeah, when you talk about a 4.5 pound machine, 4.5 pounds, so still well under 5 pounds, and you know, GeForce GTX 1650 graphics, so Turing-based graphics, although it's not RTX, obviously. I mean, this thing puts up some seriously, you know, respectable gaming numbers as well for entry-level gaming, laptop gaming. Yeah, you're right. It is a totally no compromise machine. You know what's interesting too? The design quality and the industrial design that Dell has pioneered with the XPS line, the Infinity Edge display, has done so well for them. And some of the reviews out there sort of gave them a knock for not refreshing the design. And you could argue that maybe it's due. They moved the camera up top. Good job. You know, get that nose cam away. You know, get rid of that nose cam. But you know, people have knocked them for not refreshing the mechanical design, the industrial design. I have 2 kids in college now. I'm dating myself. It's kind of crazy. I would argue if you did a poll, and we should probably see if we can find these numbers somewhere. But if you did a poll, the one of the most popular series of laptops in colleges right now, if it's not a MacBook, and let's face it, there's lots of folks, they just go for the MacBook, you know, in the mainstream. If it's not a MacBook, it's an XPS 13 or a 15. I mean, Dell's industrial design and the design of this series of machines over the past few years has done very well for them. And, you know, my son Michael is at an engineering school. He sees these things all the time. He sees the 15 and the 13. And my daughter, the same thing. She's like, yeah, I see these up. She goes to, you know, big school UNH in New Hampshire. She sees the XPS up there as well. So kudos to Dell for pulling off an iconic brand.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And, you know, in terms of not updating the design, they did take customer feedback and make changes. Plus, you know, you have full-size USB ports, USB-C, HDMI outputs. You know, like you have a card reader. So, like, it has what you want. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know,
you triggered me right there when you said card reader, and then we'll move on to the final segment and talk about our giveaway, which is coming up, by the way. But you triggered me.
I gotta burn through an SSD quick too.
No, I know, that's what I meant. That's the final segment. Yeah. So you triggered me with the SD card reader. I really like, my daily drivers have been for a couple of years now, Lenovo's ThinkPad X1 Carbon. Love the machine, especially the latest iterations with the HDR displays. Beautiful. Keyboard's best in the business. They got rid of the freaking card reader in the current 2019 version. Like, yeah, no, it's like total boo.
That's my biggest pet peeve. I need an SD card reader. Like, I have USB adapters, but you know, you leave them in the laptop, they get knocked off, they get broken. It's not the same as having it inside, and it takes up, you know, not a lot of vertical space. No reason not to go not to go thin with it. I don't care.
Yeah. I totally agree, Chris. And you know, you're into photography. You're on the road with your camera a lot, so you need access to it. Marco and I are journalists and analysts, so we're always tapping into an SD card. I think a lot of folks use SD cards, so I just don't understand why, even if it's a little, you know, what is it, nano SD, the kind that goes in your phone. micro SIM, no micro.
Yeah, the micro SD cards.
Micro SD, yeah, versus SD card, right? So I'm sorry, I'm getting all my standards wrong, but yeah, good stuff. But God dang it, bring back the SD card slot. All right, let's move on to something else in the land of storage, but not in SD or micro SD format, and that would be the Asura, man. Marco, you're gonna have to help me with these guys. Asura Genesis
Extreme. Yeah. So the reason that I got to help you with that is because nobody's heard of these guys before.
Nobody.
So I got an email from a company that said, "Hey, we are going after the enthusiast SSD market. We have a really cool SSD with RGB and modular cooling. Do you want to take a look?" I said, "Yeah, what the heck? Let's take a look," because the specs seem pretty cool. So it's this drive here. This is the Asura Genesis Xtreme. Oh. So as you can see, typical M.2 2280 NVMe SSD right here. Now, what makes it cool? Well, let me get the specs out of the way first. So Phison based PCI Express 3.0 SSD with Toshiba BICS flash memory. So even though you haven't heard of the third party making it, the parts inside this SSD are widely known. So you have, Toshiba, one of the biggest NAND manufacturers. Phison is killing it in the controller space right now. Hynix DRAM for the memory on the drive. So it's built on proven tech. And what Asura did is they've made this modular heatsink design. So it is easily removable with a couple of screws if you don't want the heatsink on it. But it also has RGB lighting. So the white pieces here and on the top, that's a light diffuser. So this guy actually, it's an RGB SSD. So everything else is going RGB. Now your storage can have RGB as well. And, it's pretty fast. So there's some caveats with the performance. Sequentials are awesome. You're over 3.5 gigs a second reads, over 3 gigs a second sequential writes. And 4K reads and writes at high Q depths. It was actually the fastest drive in Crystal Disk Mark, but at Q depth 1, it was one of the slower drives, and most consumer workloads are at Q depth 1. Now, if you look at the trace-based application tests like PC Mark, right in the middle of the stack. So, if you're looking for an SSD, you'd think a brand that's not very well known with sort of middle of the road performance would probably have real competitive pricing. And that's the other kicker. Because of the modular heatsink and the RGB lighting and the features, there is a bit of a premium. I think the 1 terabyte drive was selling for $179. But,
not bad.
It's not horrible, but you can get like an SSD Evo is cheaper.
Yeah.
So, and it's Samsung. You're going to be more comfortable buying Samsung. But then again, no heat sinks, no RGB. But if you want that, it's probably, I'd have no problem buying the drive, 7-year warranty with those features. And it's based on tech that's established. It's a third party using well-established technology. So interesting SSD. Thought it would be cool to show the audience. Hopefully you guys liked it.
It's an interesting dynamic in the land of SSDs these days, especially NVMe, high-speed NVMe SSDs, that it's real easy to get these ODM PCBs now with tried and true controller technology, the Phison controller, Toshiba, NAND, TLC NAND, their BICS, and, yeah, once you know what's on that board, once you know the guts and the components of that board, the reliability, I mean, it's kind of, I wouldn't worry about, these guys are offering a 7-year warranty for a reason, right? They can put their money where their mouth is. They know this thing's not going to fail because the testing's been done on the platform. And so they either license the platform to build it or what have you, or buy the design, ODM, OEM, whatever, and private label it. There was recently a PCI Express 4 SSD to show up on Amazon, and I forget the brand. I'll have to pull that up, but it was basically the Phison PCI Express 4 SSD for much less, like 20%. than Gigabyte's been offering with their PCI Express 4 SSD. Total no-name brand. I want to say, I have to look it up now. It's going to drive me crazy, but
yeah, we had it in the news, but I don't remember the brand either.
But again, it's the same components, and you might not trust the brand, but the warranty's there. So do you want to take a risk, save a few bucks, and probably be okay? I mean, is that too much of a stretch?
No, I if it was the cheapest SSD out there, I honestly, the brand would matter less because this has a bit of a premium. I can see people being, iffy on it, but if you want RGB and you want the heatsink, it's a cool SSD.
So if you got a windowed case, you're really going to care about the RGB SSD in there. You're going to look at it and go, hey, my bits are flashing, man.
Exactly.
I don't know. I guess, yeah. No, a lot of folks, they love it. Now, I wonder, so in the M2 slot, is it a zone that motherboards will actually allow you to control?
No, it just cycles.
Okay. All right. So you get the rainbow.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, well, hey, it's an interesting product for sure, and the performance is solid. I mean, anytime you're north of 3 gigs a second, you're doing just fine now, ain't you? Cool, good stuff. And it's PCI Express Gen 3, so if you're in a platform that doesn't support the Gen 4, and I mean right now AMD's got the only one out there with an M2 slot that does. It's good performance for sure. All right, well, let's wrap it up and talk about real quickly what we've got going on in terms of a giveaway this month. We did this awesome build with the folks at Main Gear, and went out to the wild and showed everybody what it was all about. And then all of a sudden, the good friends at Falcon Northwest stepped up out of the woodwork and said, "Hey, we want in on the party too." So we're actually looking at a review product right now that will be similar to a system, a desktop system, that we are going to give away. It'll be an AMD based rig. Marco, did we define specs yet?
Let's not, because we're still, so it's a Falcon Northwest Talon 20th anniversary edition, and coincidentally, it's a HotHardware's 20th anniversary this year as well. So there was some synergy there. It will be a high end, AMD Ryzen based build. As far as the other parts, we're not certain it's going to kick ass. And Falcon has this really cool process for putting graphics on the cases now. So probably will be some interesting customizations. We should probably leave it there for now, but rest assured it's going to be killer machine. You guys are going to drool.
Yes. Killer gaming PC, AMD, all AMD affair. Specs to be determined, but it'll be a killer gaming rig with some killer looks, killer aesthetics for Falcon's 20th anniversary and HotHardware's 20th anniversary. Maybe we should be getting more official with these announcements. But yeah, we're celebrating our 20th year on the web, which is just hard to believe, dude. That, oh my God, that we're still doing this.
That's probably why the beard's got so much gray in it.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, or the top of me is getting thin by the day. Anyways, yeah, so we got some great stuff to give away. Stop by hothardware.com, where we will be announcing the giveaway shortly. We're just waiting to get confirmation that this build's coming in. I'm going to get it in. I'm going to shoot it. I'm going to shoot video. You'll see it on YouTube shortly, and I will tease and tempt you with that bad boy. So yeah, stop by hothardware.com, where you can find us on the web. Hit thumbs up and subscribe so that you get notified when we go streaming here in our 2.5 Geeks webcast. And of course, when that giveaway gets announced and the build gets announced, it'll be up on YouTube as well, so you get notified for that. Twitter.com/HotHardware. Hot Hardware vids on YouTube, Facebook.com/HotHardware. We're everywhere. Join us, won't you? Right, Marco?
Yes, sir.
Right, Chris?
Caught him off guard.
You caught me muted. I was getting ready for the outro. All right.
I got to mix it up. And with that, everybody, we will say thank you very much for stopping by. We'll see you in the next one.